January 2005, we see the release of Resident Evil 4 on the Nintendo GameCube. October 2005, it gets released on the PS2. March 2007, now on PC. June 2007, on the Wii. You can download from the App Store on your iPhone in July 2009. PS3 and 360 got a port in 2011. Android finally got a version in 2013. Hey, release it again on PS4 and Xbox One in 2016. Let's bring it back to Nintendo with a Switch version in 2019. Hey, put it in VR mode in 2021. And you know what? Soft remake in 2021 too. Well, now it's time to remake the entire game from scratch. The original Resident Evil 4 is one of the best games ever released to the general public. It has stood the test of time with multiple releases throughout generations of consoles. It has also been influential with its gameplay mechanics. The behind-the-shoulder third-person action imitated and perfected by many games of action and horror genres since 2005. And after the critical and commercial successes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, even though 3 is kinda incomplete, Capcom decided we can only take so much of the re-releases and opted to remake the one game everybody was waiting for, the inevitable. And this Resident Evil 4 is the best version of one of the best games ever made. I had to talk about the re-releases because, like Skyrim, it did have the reputation of being everywhere. I mean, it was on iPhone since 2009, not that different than now, I guess. That's a pretty big commitment to making sure this game was accessible, unlike, some games. But the original Resident Evil 4 was truly a groundbreaking game. Its impact is seen in many titles since that time. I can't stress enough about the first-person remake with Village. Time is a flat circle. And it holds a special place in my heart. It's one of my favorite games ever, and I was cautiously optimistic when its remake was announced. There are so many questions about remakes. How faithful will it be? What direction will it take? What changes will it make? Will those changes be too much of a departure? Can it replicate the magic of the original? Will Psycho Mantis be involved? When you start Resident Evil 4 Remake, you experience the huge strides in graphics and mechanics from the original. The environments are intense and weighty, the tank controls are gone, but you still feel the mass of your movements, how heavy each step is, and how fatal a mishap can be. As you progress, the game sets up tutorials for you to really show how this world is different from what you remember. New elements like parrying and dodging create new strategies and ways to get out of a jam, and new horrors. Minor quality of life improvements like breaking crates with a press of a button and changing weapons on the fly are welcome changes. The environment is filled to the brim with more details. The lighting is moody and the shadows are the blackest of blacks. The obvious tagline for this remake is, it's Resident Evil 4 but made in 2023 with all the enhancements in tech and gameplay mechanics. But you can't just simply rely on everything you knew from the original. Capcom likes to tease and trick you into following your intuition and then pull the rug from under your feet. These moments are truly precious and actually enhances the game so much for fans of the OG. This remake is faithful in the right spots. The devs were careful with developing the entire game. In some areas, they recreated one-to-one, while in others, concepts and levels are remixed for a better flow or to make it seem more practical. There are a few areas and design choices that are completely scrapped in the base game, like the giant robot of Ramon Salazar that chases you down a bridge, quick time events, or that ugly monster on the suspended cages. But those concepts are either referenced, completely changed, or get pushed into Ada's DLC separate ways. The game still serves thrills and squeezes you to prove you can fight your way through this nightmare. Crowd control, headshots, herbs, grenades, flashbangs, suplexes, freaking parrying a chainsaw with the knife Marvin gave you in RE2. Sometimes exhaustion sets in and other times you want more, and they're both equally great responses to the section you just cleared. And same as before, you can upgrade your health by finding and mixing different color herbs and getting the merchant to bolster your weapons. There are other changes here. The blue medallions return, but now there's other unique side challenges to fight optional mini bosses or kill certain creatures in an area. The challenges and optional boss fights add more gameplay depth and baiting you to prove yourself. The rewards are well worth it, of course, but it adds to the strengths and identity of Resident Evil 4 being a video game. Another welcome change is being able to buy and sell weapons without it being too harsh. Capcom will rework this system so players can swap their weapons loadouts easily with a much more favorable buyback prices. This change allows players to experiment with almost everything the game has to offer in a single playthrough. Also, something I failed to talk about in all my videos is the sound. And the sound here is spine tingling. The audio design is crafted crafted so well, soaking the player with the echoes of the infected. Constantly, I'm looking over my shoulder or walking carefully to and away from the sound, dreading what's behind a door or the corner of a hallway. Any game worth its salt knows to manipulate the audio to immerse the player into the space. Entering wooded areas, opening doors, hearing the winds, listening to the enemies, every sound is crisp, clear, and juicy. And the save theme song is still a classic. Play it as loud as you can or with headphones to really drown yourself into the world of Resident Evil. One of the few gripes many people have about the original is how Ashley operates as the sidekick. I say many people because I don't really remember her being a huge problem. I thought the game design around her was alright. If anything, it brought a certain level of intensity as you have to consider Ashley and Leon's spaces so you don't get pinched by the enemies. And like the original, Ashley more or less works the same here, but I think this version should be a welcome change for those many people. She doesn't have a health bar as it's replaced with a player down feature where you just need to be near her and hold a button to get her back on her feet. The nice tweak for her is instead of a harsh wait follow commands where she literally does what you tell her, you instead have her stay close or hang loose. In both cases, Ashley still follows you, but this does improve the flow of whatever strategy you make for clearing areas. I also like her solo playthroughs. Obviously, her section follows that trope in playing as the second character, but I did like how there was a sense of dread walking through the dark hallways, dodging the knights, and finding solace with the light. Now, aside from the gameplay changes, there have been story ones too. The plot is the same, but the details have shifted. Leon is sent to this random village in Spain to rescue the president's daughter, but there seems to be a connection to what happened in Raccoon City. And he kills a lot of baddies, big and small, villagers, cultists, mercenaries, monsters, and oversized mosquitoes. The one change that sticks out the most is Luís, who has a much bigger presence in the remake. He's still a sassy man, and we see a lot more of his infectious personality and charm. I love how they expanded his role where we get to play alongside him and he gets incorporated into key moments of the game. Ada Wong and her relationship with Leon is a continuation from Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's different and much more subtle than what it was in the original. I felt a little overwhelmed here, mostly because I love Ada from the first game, but I do believe Separate Ways does build her up and develop her character much better than in the base game. Actually, tangent time. The Separate Ways DLC is mwah, chef's kisses. It's a real nice fast-paced version of the main game. The setup is basically Ada's perspective throughout the entire setting. You see the events unfold through a bird's eye view since Ada was mostly watching over Leon. There are more background development on the events surrounding the main game, but the true blessing is it gives more screen time to my original video game crush. Yes, I'm a simp for Ada Wong, so of course I had a blast playing as her as she's Batman ziplining through the castles and buildings. The stark difference between the DLC and main campaign is some of the gameplay mechanics. Ada's playthrough is much more streamlined, with weapon upgrades and the gameplay flow being tailored for a more action-heavy approach. Not to mention some of the content cut from the main game, like the dodging laser sequence and the U3 boss fight, are in the DLC and it fits in really well. The takeaway for Separate Ways is how it's more Resident Evil 4 and it's with Ada. Okay, tangent time over. Other characters too are fleshed out, including Krauser. In fact, this Krauser is so tragic and heartbreaking, especially because he plays the macho gung-ho military super soldier who needs to complete the mission at all costs archetype so well. Both the knife fight, which went from an amazing quick time event cutscene to an amazing and intense boss fight, and the military island fight against Krauser have fantastic payoffs. Background information about Las Plagas are littered throughout the game, as well as the plight of the villagers and the influence of Lord Sadler and his family and the connection with the Umbrella Corporation. Some of my favorite additions were incorporating more of these character flavors. The merchant is such a nice pirate and still quotable. Ashley and Luís root for you in the shooting gallery mini games in pretty cute ways. These additions, coupled with the gameplay ones, help flesh out the world and make it more immersive while still retaining the quirkiness and fun. And it's hard to find some negatives here, so I'm really stretching to figure something out, but yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about this game. It's tight and focused on being an amazing video game, and it truly is, but maybe the one true detractor is it's a remake that doesn't push any boundaries, and that's not a bad thing. On its own, this is one of the best games that came out last year. However, with context, it doesn't exactly offer anything new or groundbreaking. It's not like the original in that way. This remake is not going to redefine the horror or action genres, and it won't be the influential juggernaut as well. Remakes are tricky. Most of them have been these super old games where the mechanics were of the times, and bringing them with modern techniques and a HD/4K coat of paint like Resident Evil 2 and 3. Going from this fixed third-person view that defined the series for a time and translating that to a third-person view that was, redefined by Resident Evil 4 in 2005. time is a flat circle. I think what has been missing in some remakes is trying to recapture the soul of the originals and what made them unique. It's hard to reimagine that even if it's the same developer, as it may not be the same people or team that worked on the first one, and everybody has a different takeaway about the same game. Video games have undergone huge changes in graphical fidelity and gameplay mechanics and design. Adapting the initial game into modern times is an uphill battle. There are unique expectations when it comes to those remakes, but almost all the changes within this remake is a net positive. Even some of the subtractions adds to the game. The level of effort is felt throughout its entirety. There isn't wasted space here. In a weird way, I think of this game as a handcrafted remake where the devs had such a fond appreciation for the original and wanted to recapture the essence of it. Which we can boil all of the thoughts about this remake to, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say the triggering word. Feelings. How this remake helps recreate those feelings from playing the original, that addicting drug called nostalgia. The intense rush where you are surviving against an onslaught from the villagers, where you are sniping down monks to cover for Ashley, and we are holding your breath dealing with this bullet sponge monstrosity. It's a fantastic game on its own, but playing the original enhances the experience of this remake. I dare say it's almost a requirement to be a fan of the 2005 title before playing this one. This is a remake where you're replaying a one-to-one recreation of a level, where you hear the same lines and see the same villains and story beats, but you come away surprised and delighted at the changes and the balance of the familiar with the new. When I was waiting for a particular moment to occur based on my preconceived notions and it flipped, it brought so much joy to me. Resident Evil 4 Remake is probably not going to be one of the most influential games or carry a legacy like the original powerhouse, and it didn't need to. It just needs to be the best version of one of the best games ever made. It's a perfect remake. What do you think about Resident Evil 4 Remake? Is it your cup of tea, or was it unnecessary to remake it at all? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you can also like and subscribe and follow me elsewhere too, that'll be cool. And as always, thank you for watching.